Hello, this is Devin Gray with the Mogul Realty Group and EXP with the Mogul Mastermind February market update for Edmonton. Just a quick reminder that all of this great, wonderful monthly information is available at the Realtors Association of Edmonton website. This came out around the 1st or 2nd of February. You can catch every monthly update on the 1st or 2nd of the next month. So the February stats should be available in about a week, as this is currently being recorded on February 24th. So in another week or so, you will be able to catch the February stats for Edmonton and the Edmonton area. Just moving on to some highlights for the greater Edmonton area, total sales decreased nearly 26% to January 2022 and virtually flat to December 2022. Single-family home sales were down 32.1% from a year ago, and they actually increased a little bit, 2% from December. Single-family homes averaged $451,000, down 6.2% from Jan 2022, and down 1.4% from just this past December. Single-family homes averaged 65 days on market. They were 54 days on market a year ago. Overall listings are averaging 66 days on market, up 6 days from both January last year and also December 2022. So in a nutshell, things continue to be slow, and it does have a feeling like we're back into a much more typical first part of the year. The last couple of years have been quite deceiving, especially last year, as a lot of people started to buy properties before the interest rate hikes. And so that's why we had a very busy January and February, well, basically right through until April. And so that's reflected on the home price index. This is going from January 2022 to January 2023. You can see the big hump, the big roller coaster ride that took us basically January right through until about June. And then things started to slow down. These two graphs here, the blue one is for Edmonton single family homes, and then the red one is an Edmonton composite, basically a makeup of all types and styles of properties in the Edmonton area. Some big things to highlight here is just, again, the Edmonton composite, which is all types and styles. You can see basically a 3.6% drop year over year, despite that big increase in values January to June. And then Edmonton single family homes dropped 3.4%. And just flipping back to the graph here, you can really see in July of 2022 how things really started to cool off. July, the significant thing that happened in July was that's when we had the largest interest rate hike from the Bank of Canada in 2022. It was a 1 full percentage point. That was the most and the only time that we did that 1 percentage point. And it definitely sent some shivers through the real estate market across the country. And you can see how things started to decline and really cool off from there. Some important notes in regards to inflation. January inflation in Canada hit 5.9%. That eased off more than expected. They were expecting 6.1%. So that's a small but significant trend in the right direction. This does back up the Bank of Canada's suggestion. It'll hold interest rates at current levels. The benchmark rate for interest rates is 4.5%. That is a 15-year high. Bank of Canada is forecasting inflation to cool off by about 3% later this year into fall for 2023, and then getting back to its target rate of 2% in 2024. Some good news for Canada in January in terms of jobs. It added a net 150,000 jobs across the country. And Alberta's inflation rate in January dropped 1 full percentage point from 6% to 5%. And Alberta now has the lowest inflation rate in Canada. Another good sign of where we're heading for Alberta. So it does continue to be uncertain times, obviously coming out of the pandemic, hitting inflation, talking about, 15-year highs in terms of interest rates. And the last time inflation hit this high was 40 years ago, going back to the 1980s. There's a lot of uncertainty going on in Canada and in the world. And when it comes to Edmonton, we certainly are taking one step forward, one step back. For Edmonton, moving one step forward, this was some very big recent news. WestJet announcing the largest network expansion from Edmonton in the airline's history. Several new nonstop services. You can see that list there. Minneapolis, Seattle, also a much bigger presence down east, going to Moncton, Charlottetown, London, Ontario, as well as Ottawa. And then you've also got Penticton, Montreal out east, and Nanaimo. So that's a quite significant announcement for WestJet. This is a wonderful local news story. There's a company called Jobber, excuse me, that it's a software company that focuses on helping small service professionals such as plumbers and electricians, and that when these two former University of Alberta grads created this software program, they noticed that there was a lot of service providers that were still working off of Post-it notes and scribble pads and various things like that. And so they created a software program that basically will help these service providers of electricians and plumbers and contractors run their entire business through the Jobber program. This company has now grown to nearly 600 employees, and it's now just recently secured $100 million in venture capital. That's a massive amount of money and the largest amount ever for a local Edmonton company. So expect bigger things. If you can grab a full article on that, it's well worth reading, because it does sound like the sky is the limit, that they barely touched the surface in regards to what's possible for the amount of businesses out there that they could still touch. And obviously there's going to be competition, but Jobber certainly seems to be on the cutting edge and growing at an exponential rate and doing some great things. Oil and gas, obviously, it's unfortunate that there are some positives when we've got a terrible thing such as a war happening. But the Russian invasion in Ukraine has certainly helped Alberta when it comes to oil and gas. And we quietly hit a annual oil production record. Last year's output breaks the previous record set in 2021, and it's almost double the amount of oil produced from back in 2010. And then further expansion planned when the completion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion ends and is completed. That's going to add another 500,000 barrels. So there's certainly some good news when it comes to the oil and gas industry in Alberta. And the former Edmonton Remand Center is to be demolished. This, I feel, is a good news story, as the city is making decisions, some firm decisions. They announced last month about the Northlands Coliseum getting demolished. Unfortunately, that's going to cost taxpayers $25 million, but it's really become an eyesore and a real blight in that area around Wayne Gretzky Drive and 118th Avenue. This building here, the Remand Center, has also been something that has become an eyesore and feels like it's holding the Edmonton downtown back. So it's nice to see that this will be demolished and make room for some new development. We also are taking a couple of steps backwards, or at least a step backward, in the Edmonton area with a couple of stories. Hudson's Bay closing 2 stores in Alberta. The one that affects Edmonton is the Londonderry store. This leaves only 4 locations left. The one in St. Albert, the one at Kingsway Mall, West Edmonton Mall, and Southgate. And so I believe at one time there was as many as 9 Hudson Bay stores in the Edmonton area. And so this isn't necessarily as much a reflection on what's happening in Edmonton as it is what's happening in that retail world. And, over the years, you've seen Sears go down, Eaton's go down, Woodward's. Some of you may not have even heard those names before. Hudson's Bay has been uniquely Canadian. It's been around for over 350 years. It does seem like they have plans to survive. They're bringing the old Zellers name back. It sounds like Zellers will be moving into some of these remaining Hudson's Bay locations, and then obviously having a much larger online presence. But still, that's a large amount of square footage in kind of I'd say a B plus, A minus mall in Northeast Edmonton, and will certainly be difficult for them to fill that space. And then probably the biggest concern right now for Edmonton is the downtown core. For anybody who's gone to an Oilers game or gone downtown for dinner or a movie or something like that, or maybe you aren't, and this is the reason why. But if you have visited downtown, you'll see that there is become quite a homeless challenge in the downtown core, and there's a lot of safety concerns, and so Google announced DeepMind is closing its doors. That was announced last month, and now the latest story is again more large square footage in the Edmonton City Center Mall, with Sport Check leaving, and they do cite safety concerns as being one of the reasons. Now, thankfully, the U of A is moving 500 employees into the old Bay location at Enterprise Square, so that certainly is going to bring some vibrancy down there with having more people down there. But there definitely is a challenge and something that needs to be looked at in regards to fixing the downtown core. There's a lot of great and wonderful things happening in the downtown area in the Ice District. But unfortunately, in some of the older areas of the downtown, there's definitely some improvements that need to be focused on. Okay, we're going to move into real estate, sales and where things are at. January saw the worst home sales since 2009. That's what the Canadian Real Estate Association announced. They were the lowest, going down to about 37%. And so I think that does need to be taken with a bit of a grain of salt, because January last year was so significantly strong, again, because so many people were rushing in to buy properties before interest rates started to move. So yes, they're down, but at the same time, I also do feel that at least in Edmonton, that we're back to more of a typical spring selling season, which traditionally doesn't get going until the mid to the late part of March. And on that note, in regards to home sales in Alberta, they were a lot more level. Now, because we didn't go up and burn so bright as they did in BC and Ontario, we had less place to fall. So benchmark home prices have been falling on a monthly basis in both Canada and Alberta, but the drop has not been as significant in Alberta, and that's great news. Higher borrowing costs are likely to continue to weigh on home prices as we get deeper into 2023. The Alberta market has held up and continues to hold up better than the rest of the province or the rest of the country, and that's great news. Stable rate encouraging for Edmonton home buying, seeking mortgages. Now, certainly last fall, the best way to put it is ultimately buyers won't do anything. People will stand on the sidelines and not necessarily make decisions when there's uncertainty. And so as interest rates were significantly climbing last fall, each time there was an opportunity for the Bank of Canada to do something about interest rates, they were rising. So it really put buyers in unfamiliar and uncertain ground. Well, the Bank of Canada announcement in January after their 0.25% rate increase talked about how that's probably it for a while. So yes, inflation's high, interest rates are high, but it doesn't sound like they're going to be necessarily getting any worse. So that's bringing some certainty back to buyers. It's kind of the new reality. And I think a lot of buyers are also waking up to the fact that it really isn't as much about the interest rate. It's about the monthly payment. Yes, you're going to see more going towards interest, less towards principal. But if you can afford the monthly payments, which might be doable now because your purchasing power becomes more because prices have come down, that you might be able to purchase that house that maybe you weren't able to purchase a year ago when prices were a lot higher. It certainly seems that, we're in for a much more typical busy spring selling season, which is poised to become much more active towards middle to the end of March and pushing through April into June. Last month we talked about gross domestic product increasing, which brings jobs, which brings population growth. And with population growth comes more people moving to an area and downward pressure on vacancy rates. And that's what we're seeing. Rents may soon rise because we've hit a 10-year low for rents. Last fall, we dropped down to 4.3%. When you start to get into around 2%, that's virtually, no vacancy. So we're at 4.3% and certainly, heading towards potentially even lower vacancy rates. And that's a good thing for investors. And that's what we're here to talk about. And so when vacancy rates drop, then that's the opportunity to increase rents. And so that's certainly a good sign for not only for people that have rental properties, but people that want to be purchasing rental properties, and ultimately the long-term health of where things are going with real estate in the Edmonton area. Just something else that's backing up rental rates in Edmonton shrinking due to migration and rising mortgage rates. Again, you got a lot of people that are moving here because there's job opportunities. And there's also some certainty in regards to, interest rates not moving up much more. This information comes from the CMHC rental market report that came out the latter half of January. So if you've never read it or have not seen it before, I would highly recommend Googling that and pulling that up. It would be a good read. CMHC found that in Edmonton, rental demand is outpacing increases in supply, resulting in a shrinking rental market. Again, great news for what's coming over the course of the next 6 to 12 months for Edmonton. Jobs added in January in Alberta. This comes from the Owl, which is an article from the Alberta Treasury Branch, ATB Bank. Employment in January increased by 0.9%. Or about 21,000 positions compared to December. This is great news. Alberta's unemployment rate has now dropped to 5.6%, expected to be 5.8. So, you look at all these good little signs, inflation coming down a little bit more than people anticipated, unemployment coming down, rental vacancy coming down. These are all really good green shoots of optimism for the Alberta market. I love to share this slide. It just shows that, again, there's some opportunities for people, and again, reasons why people are coming. Some of these jobs are obviously in the retail sector, but others are a good, significant, well-paying jobs, working for companies such as an organization such as EPCOR, Alberta Health Services, obviously the City of Edmonton, Canada Post, Stantec, Enbridge. So a great list there, and I'm sure that we'll see a lot of these companies on this list each month whenever we're doing this market update, as several of them have hundreds of jobs to fill, and so they're not necessarily going to do that overnight. So I'm sure we'll see this on the same list as we move throughout 2023. So ultimately, what does this all mean? Well, as I said before, we're still in uncertain times. There's a lot of things that could potentially upset the apple cart, both when it comes to the political landscape. We've got a provincial election coming up later on this year. You can hear all of the political commercials happening on television and radio already. That obviously is going to provide some uncertainty. Obviously, a lot of interesting times around the world when it comes to what's happening in Ukraine, North Korea rattling its chain, China rattling its chain. There's a lot of things that ultimately could cause some uncertainty. And yet at the same time, that's what's potentially going to bring more people to Canada, is that you're looking for an opportunity for some sort of stability. And if the worst thing that we've got going on is, a potentially different political landscape, well, that's certainly better than what other parts of the world might have in store for them when it comes to potential conflict and stuff like that. Uncertain times can be an excellent time for improving your financial situation. There are more millionaires that are made during times of uncertainty than during good times. So certainly an opportunity to get yourself in a good financial position, barring any unforeseen negative circumstances, as I talked about before. Alberta is poised to lead the nation. That absolutely has shown over the course of the past couple of months. And I certainly would agree with this as well, that when the rest of Canada seems to do well, Alberta unfortunately suffers. And when the rest of Canada looks like it's going to be struggling, Alberta seems to be in a position to do quite well. And that certainly seems to be the landscape facing us over the course of the next 6 to 18 months. We've got great job prospects. People continue to move here, both from other parts of the province, or sorry, other parts of the country, as well as immigration. Keep in mind that nationally, I mean, they're not all going to end up here, but nationally, over the course of the next 3 years, we're expecting 1.5 million immigrants, 500,000 a year. And a lot of them are going to end up coming to Canada, or sorry, coming to Alberta, mainly because once they get into BC and Ontario, they're going to see, wow, if I'm going to buy a property, it's crazy here. I can get into the oil and gas industry or other great opportunities job-wise in Alberta, and I'm not going to be paying an arm and a leg either through rents or certainly in purchasing a property. Finally, the message in regards to what you need to do to be successful is continue to become educated. Make sure you watch the trends, and also just continue to join us the last Wednesday of every month at our Mogul Mastermind event. You can either watch it online, or you can join us again the last Wednesday of every month in person at the Creative Hive. And that's the February market update for Mogul Mastermind. This is Devin Gray, Senior Agent with Mogul Realty Group and EXP. Hope you have a great day and a very profitable rest of February and into March, and we'll talk to you soon.